just another person, sorry. I will let everybody raise their hands, but first I want to say if you do want to be part kind of this continuous community collaborative, that's something we've at every meeting we've been asking people if you want to be part of that continuing effort, so we can, when the opportunity comes to submit an application for those implementation dollars or any other potential funding sources that may be available to implement projects that are in the plan. I ask that you use the chat, put your name and email, or you can email me separately. I can put my email in the chat as well, or my email was in the meeting invite too that you all received. So, and I would like to know if you are either a resident or business owner in the focus area. That is helpful too. So I'll go ahead and open it up. If anybody wants to start, I'll look for a hand. Mr. Cohen? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Cecilia. Great to see you again. And thank you for holding this information session where we can provide feedback. I want to kind of raise two issues. I think one of them are some concerns related to the plan and making sure that those get corrected. And I think the other one is around project recommendations. The first is, I think, kind of general around what I would call broadly some Title VI concerns or biases in the existing draft plan. Kind of the emphasis downtown at the expense or lack of projects identified in some of the most disadvantaged communities. And some of the bias that we can even see in terms of east-west, or even things like streetscape improvements, where if you looked in kind of the details of the appendix, things like street trees were being added, in Oleander and Westchester, but not in other neighborhoods. So I really want to make sure that investments and proposed projects are equal, not just comparatively, but also within the project area and the different neighborhoods and demographics that are within the project area. I know that I've read the letter authored by the Kern County Taxpayers Association and others, and it seems like there is some fairly broad support for improvements along Union Avenue, looks like P and 4th Street, as well as a Mill Creek extension south. And so I think these are all really great projects that would help ensure that the communities, south of downtown are being kind of represented. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to say anything? I'll open it up.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Mr. Wendell. Go ahead.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, I just want to echo that. South of downtown really seems to be severely neglected.
Okay.
And just repairing roads in itself has been slow to go about. And businesses recently, they've approved. No one saw it coming, but they added a liquor store right there at California and L. And that's really not something that this community needs, is another liquor store. There's a lot of crime usually in these neighborhoods because there's a lack of income that is above the poverty level. And whenever you have poverty level income, you're going to have crime. And so there's a lot of money here in Kern County. There's a lot of oil money here in Kern County. And Alaska gives a UBI once a year to all of its residents to curb crime, and it helped curb crime. So we need to reach out to these communities and help them reach their goals of achieving jobs that would put them out of the poverty level. And, you know, I know on MLK, they got the Job Resource Center, they got training centers, but it really hasn't been enough. Okay, so we need to really dig deep and find out why we haven't been able to make a dent. And this is decades long in the making. I have some solutions that I won't share right now because I don't want to scare everybody, but I believe these solutions will work. Currently, I want to share that I am trying to put a community center on a vacant lot where people used to come and dump their trash. Okay, and trash is being dumped because people can't afford to go to the dump. So when you talk about a rigged system, you know, it just adds and contributes trash and everything else imaginable. Just recently, it moved from just dumping on that property, the empty lot, which is 1200 11th Street, to people camping out in the abandoned building there and just camping out and making it another place for homeless to camp out at. And usually when that happens, that means there's drugs nearby. So for a long time, the California Avenue Senior Housing, the residents there have to endure the long, hot summers at a gazebo, and it's just not enough. You know, you got veterans, seniors, people with disabilities, and you got emergency aid units taking away people in ambulance almost daily, and people dying at least once a month. It's very depressing. And no one said nothing. And I finally got fed up with it because I live here with my wife. And, you know, these people, they don't have the strength or the energy. They're weak, you know, they're feeble, they're afraid. So I've taken it upon myself. I contacted a realtor. I found out who the owner is of that property. And we need a community center there. I've already started some things. We're looking up grants to raise money to build a community center there. I have a design group, and I'm going to put together a letter and share that with the city council and hope that I can get support, because I'm going to have to pay about 36,000, the estimated cost for the empty lot, plus whatever the design group is going to charge me, anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000. Estimated, you know, we're looking at about $60,000 before we break ground to build anything. Okay, so I'm letting you know, everyone here, that to maybe put together letters. This community here needs a community center. It can also double as an after-school program. It can double as a cooling center. My building will have a fitness center, a lounge area for reading, and, you know, a little private entertainment for the groups. And the third floor will have office space and boardrooms. So this way it could officially pay for itself. This is all accompanied with the bottom floor having a commercial kitchen to feed some of the homeless people with disabilities. It's right over there behind Stay Focused as well. So I'm trying to partner with them. But this community needs things like this, not for the city to come in here, which they already have, and the realtors, and they're building homes. These are not going to be affordable homes in a low-income area. So I don't know what they think they're doing. They will probably fill those homes. It sounds like they want to change the demographics of it, but, you know, that's not going to improve the neighborhood. Besides the community center, residents here have problems affording medical. So in my plans is another vacant lot where they dump trash to build a wellness clinic. So we're like, if they can't afford their doctor's appointment, they can come in and get checked This will all be done by medical professionals that are volunteer and students coming in to get their degrees. So I kind of have a plan, but this is all new to me to put this all together. And right now, I need a lot of help. I'm severely overwhelmed with a lot of issues. I have to worry about my own family. My hours have been cut on my job. And so I have to apply for partial unemployment. And when it comes to getting stuff printed up, getting things done on the internet, research and stuff like that, I need people who have been there before that can help me.
Okay, well, you covered a lot there. So I just wanted to comment on a couple of them before we move to the next person. You mentioned in your first part about jobs and making livable jobs and wages, and a component of this plan is to do workforce development plan. You said you didn't want to share your solutions, but I would love to hear if you have ideas that would work as part of that workforce development component of our plan. So if you want to send me a separate email and share those. And as far as your your development, your community projects that you have, the community center and the health clinic, I mean, those are potential. We have a lot of grant, not just TCC, but there's community development block grant dollars. We have a lot of potential. We have funding that funds those type of projects. So we would love to, sit down with you and hear more about and, offer assistance where we can.
My fear is, I'm sorry, my fear is they're going to start buying up these lots and putting homes here before I can get a chance, the community can get these things going, and
well, land control is important. Yeah.
They need to stop. They need to hear from us to see what we want. My friends that live over off of Cottonwood, all the empty land just east of Cottonwood.
Well, we have other people that want to talk. Can I give other people an opportunity and we can talk more about this on it? Because you're kind of talking about land use, and that's a whole nother story. This isn't really a land use plan. This is more community projects, active transportation. We can't really control land use with this plan. So that's a whole nother topic we can talk about. So I have a lot of hands up here. So I want to give others an opportunity if that's okay. Sure. So I'll go with Tina.
Yes, hello. I'm Tina Bingston. I'm with the MLK Community Revitalization Plan that we have with Arlena Waller. And first of all, there's a little comment I'd like to make, that we are stereotyping the people of Southeast Bakersfield. I live on Cottonwood Road personally, and I do a lot with the community here. And so the issue with the area and the resources and the people within the community is that they are not uneducated people. First of all, they're not people. So that stereotyping and that idea is put out there, and words are things, and they become something that people have in the back of their mind. So when these projects are available, or monies and funds are available, those things weigh heavily on the minds of the people who are choosing where they're going to put these monies. So we have to give the people a fair chance. Like, there are a lot of disadvantaged people out here that are way below the poverty level, but then there's some that aren't, that choose to be here because they have family members who are below the poverty level, and they want to try to enhance their life, their way of living. That being said, I like to just comment on the project area. I believe in I guess it was a 2009 to 15 plan or something. They had the same areas for getting these funds being used for developing the affordable housing, the streetscape, and so on. And we're back in that same area, giving these same areas all these funds. When I'm going to bring up the Southeast, because this place gets no funding. We have no type of considerations for development. There's a new school going down that's being built as we speak down the street from my housing, and there have been no plans to have any street improvements, which I don't understand why, because now even when it's developing, I can't get out of my driveway. I live on Cottonwood Road in between Brooks and Lewis, right there. And it takes me, I have to sit sometimes in the morning, in the afternoons for a period when we say 5 minutes, it doesn't seem like a long time, but it is a long time when that's the only way you have to exit your driveway. So I think that there's more consideration in just getting this area and not, I guess, up to a standard that everybody else is living. I hear there's neighborhoods that don't even have street lights. I went last week. I saw a street of right there between Wilson and South Chester, that little area right there to the north of Union. There's the whole neighborhood. There's no street lights. So, and that being said, is that we need to facilitate the people that have the street lights to feel safe to be able to walk to the store if there's a store available. And that's another issue. I just think that the project area should be broadened and there's more consideration to just giving this area here the same type of amenities that they have on the other side of town. That's a comment that I have to say it right now.
All right. Thank you, Tina. I just want to say a quick comment on the project area. We are limited. You know, TCC is about a focused area. I mean, I realize, you know, we have disadvantaged communities throughout many portions of the city. And I mean, it'd be great if we can, you know, do these kind of focused efforts, you know, in a broader scale. But unfortunately, we are limited with, you know, when we're ready to submit that TCC application, we are limited to a 5 square mile area. So we did try to include another consideration of the project areas. We needed to include our future high-speed rail station. That also makes us competitive to get these funds, and showing how neighborhoods around the station are connected. So to include the station and as much of the disadvantaged areas we could, we brought it as far south and east as much as we could within that 5 square mile limit. So I just wanted to say that, you know, I agree that we have had significant, you know, and I'd love to sit down with you, Tina, and discuss more of this. There has been additional, you know, HUD funds invested in the Southeast, and I would love to share that with you, but that's another topic and we'll get there. So I want to give others an opportunity to speak. So thank you, Tina.
Cecilia,
Uh-huh.
I just want to make a real quick comment on the boundary. I understand that we're limited by the boundary of this plan, but one of the things that I find a little bit disturbing is that, you know, the city, in terms of their affordable housing policy, has really steered all affordable housing, from what I can tell, into these disadvantaged communities. And really what it gets down to is steering. You know, we're not placing affordable housing citywide in neighborhoods of all economic levels or all race and ethnicity. And that seems like that's a real equity concern. You know, it's just like the homeless center. You know, when we talked about building this gateway for the homeless, you know, only communities that had zoning in disadvantaged communities were looked at. Nobody looked at, for example, District Avenue, which has the same zoning as Brundage. And so these are the types of, I think, equity issues that are a little bit concerning. And I know that we're not going to be able to resolve all of them because of the plan boundary, but I do just want to just kind of raise those.
No, those are good points. And those are good points to raise when we do our general plan update, where we can control the land use and the type of housing that's can be built throughout the city. So I would ask you to continue that through another project, like where we can make that kind of impact. So thank you, Adam. I would, next person I have here is Mr. Turnipseed.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. And I put in my letter, and I always, with all this I've listened to, the question is, how are the proposals that are making, like Emma made a long list of proposals, how are they scored? What are the matrix that you use to judge everybody's ideas? What will give us the biggest return in our communities?
Well, based on the outreach we got, the volume on the types, and also for TCC, it needs to have a large impact in that greenhouse gas reduction. That's a very big component. For housing score, we need that density, and we need close proximity to you know, a transportation corridor or So, I mean, there are neighborhood improvements that can also be included, but really the biggest, like if you look at other TCC projects, I mean, we can do it, but it's great. We can do a holistic of neighborhood improvements and that big infrastructure, transit, you know, walkable improvements. I mean, it just depends on, but yeah, greenhouse gas, and we also have to calculate an economic benefit and health care. But there's actually tables, and if you go to the, I'll ask Jason if he can post the website to the CCC website, on the Street Growth Council website. They have, if you look at their guidelines, they have how they score projects. There's a table in those guidelines, and that's what we use to think both, you know, getting that high greenhouse gas reduction and making an impact on the community. I mean, it's a balance,
So
and
that
we need to be competitive. Yeah.
because I look at the red line, I see little judge that cutouts here and there, and I guess the real thing that I see is, and when I've heard a downtown bias and all this, but and there was a meeting, press conference last week to talk about Old Town Current. They need tender loving care, and I agree that they've gotten a few projects, done some mixed use housing and things in there that have happened, but they obviously want some more improvements. But then I also see the city has placed the high-speed rail track right on Sumner Avenue. And from what I know, I spent a lot of time in Sacramento. People live under these viaducts, especially the one that runs through downtown Sacramento from the I-5 to the 99 before it goes to the 50. There's hundreds of homeless people living under these bridges because these bridges are obviously very wide and streets run through them. That is a disadvantaged community. It's a historic community. And from everything I've read, and there's been studies about what happens when you run these concrete walls through communities and how it's effective. So how does the city, on one hand, want to address a disadvantaged community, but then with all the published studies still go through and put a very disruptive, and I'm not talking from the need of high-speed rail, but just the impacts to the community that are going to happen that have been documented all over the country when you do this. And in fact, many places are lowering and putting their stuff underground as not to be so divisive in their community. So how does that score? What are those other things cities doing where you're trying to help and do things on one side? We supported Measure N because this town's got a shopping list 10 miles long for bringing the parts of the community up to where they should be. So the question is, even if we did, and if Old Town Current was considered in all this, you might go in and spend a few $1 million fixing things up, but in 5 or 10 years, there'll be a viaduct running through there 75 feet up in the air. It's going to be the skyline of East Bakersfield. That has impacts. So how does the city measure one thing versus another?
Hey, Mike, I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that's a really important and valid point. I would point out that for the purposes of this conversation, the high-speed rail project is a state project that's separate from the TCC planning process we're going through now. But to your point, we definitely don't want to see that alignment impact Old Town Kern in a negative way. So since the beginning, when we started working with them on the vision plan, we made it a point to tell them about the importance of Old Town Kern. I remember back in 2014, when they came to town, they had no idea that it even existed. And so we've been educating them about that, telling them about that, and the importance of not impacting Sumner Street in a negative way, and the opportunity for you and for everyone on this call to make a real impact there is to comment on their draft EIR that's out for circulation right now. They're evaluating that and they're putting together their plan to try to mitigate our concerns, because these are our concerns collectively. The city has the same concerns and doesn't want to see that be a nuisance essentially to the downtown area. So if there's ways
Well, I
to
personally
their own
thought,
impact. Go ahead, Mike.
well, I thought it's a city that when you looked at the Truxton project versus the F Street project, looking from what I can see, would have been less disruptive to disadvantaged communities to take the Truxton project. And yet the city basically changed after 5 years of supporting, made their mind up one day, we're moving it to F Street. And as I talked to people about it, if you're going to do anything for Old Town Kern, then you should have put the station between Baker and Beale on Southern, if that's where your track's going to be anyway, so you can have some economic development in that part of town.
I think you should submit that comment to the high-speed rail. They're in the middle of their decision process now.
Well, I thought that die has already been cast.
They did complete their EIR on the
station.
They did complete their EIR on the Fresno to Bakersfield segment that ends at the station where they currently plan to put it at F Street. So if they're going to bring that piece of infrastructure to our community, we want to make sure that we have a voice in that conversation and that we're expressing our concerns and doing the best we can to make sure that it incorporates with us. So again,
Will the city
this is a good opportunity for you to go ahead, Mike.
Will the city entertain, if that is going to be the path, that at least the station be moved where the most economic benefit can happen to a area that needs it much more than F Street?
That's not our choice. It's the state's project. But I don't want to get off space here, Mike, and I'd be happy to chat with you more about this. We can meet up and go to lunch, but I want to kind of make sure we're staying on point with the purpose of this group. We've got so many folks that are giving us their time to talk about TCC. So if we could get back to that topic, I would appreciate it.
That's right. And I support TCP, especially in the most disadvantaged communities, because that's what it's for. But the city also had an opportunity 4 years ago when I really wasn't paying that much attention to get $35 million, and they passed on it because they wanted to spend it on F Street.
Well, I can tell you that that's actually inaccurate. We didn't pass. We weren't qualified to apply yet because you have to go through this planning process first. That is a requirement of the state, which is why we're going through this now so that we can make sure we're ready to apply for the next round. We want a piece of that money for Bakersfield just as much as anybody else. Fresno got $70 million. I would love to see
that.
$70 million come to Bakersfield.
Fresno.
Awesome. Well, and that's great for Fresno, and it should.
One final question: who drew the red line?
Do you mean the area, the focus area?
Yes. Who designed that?
City staff. We just we included our high-speed rail stationary plan boundary as much as the disadvantaged area in addition to that to the south and east.
And as Cecilia mentioned earlier, it was based on the guidance and technical assistance from our partners at the Strategic Growth Council and the DOC. And, they gave us pretty specific criteria that's laid out on their website for what the focus area should be and what it should include. So we've done the best we can to fit into that criteria so that we can be like Fresno and get our piece of the pie for this community. I think it's important. We have to be competitive.
And why weren't we competitive back 4 years ago?
Again, we haven't get back the planning process yet.
Okay, I'm done.
All right. The next person I have, Mr. Hightower.
Good afternoon, Cecilia. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for hosting this. You may be aware, but maybe others are not, but I've been involved with the TCC project in Fresno from the very beginning. And I'm currently the project manager on their Clean Shared Mobility project, which is part of that. And under that And the reason I raise that is I have concerns with the process that the city is using for the TCC, where in the Fresno process, all of the projects originated from the community, and there were workshops where the community gave input into which ones they like and prioritize, and those projects advanced. The city itself did not propose most of the projects. In fact, one of the projects the city had proposed did not advance. Now, here in Bakersfield, it appears to be the other way, where the projects that have been proposed all came from the city, and there was some attempt to get community input on those. However, those projects originated from the city.
Can I clarify
Now,
one thing, Troy, before you move
Yeah.
on? Can I clarify one thing before you move on?
sure.
I just want to say that all the projects that we brought up in our workshops were all from already community outreach plans, from our downtown vision plan, which had extensive community input. I mean, you were part of that process. Also, they came from Kern Cog's active transportation plans, our bike plan. All of those had extensive community workshop, and what we brought to the table was educating the community, reminding them what they already told us they wanted. So there's nothing new or surprising in our current plan. It's all pre-planned. And what we did with our workshops was say, hey, help us choose what you think could we fund is most funded. I mean, we were welcomed new ideas and new things. And, Adam brought great ideas that we will definitely include all of, clear named ideas like extending the Mill Creek Linear Park. So I think those are the most useful comments we can get right now, is really helping us name projects like Troy. I don't know if you're probably going to move on to this next, but your transit idea. I mean, we can broaden that discussion in the plan. We do mention a downtown shuttle as a strategy, but you mentioned extending it further south. I mean, that's definitely doable and workable. So I'll let you continue.
I will get to that, but first I want to say I do agree with what you said, that those are old plans and proposals that have been around for a long time. And that's another concern, is that shows they were not the result of this TCC project. They were things that have been around for a long time. But
Not that
when I
long.
say community engagement, going back to TCC, I'll be more specific. Community engagement from the disadvantaged communities. That's what, in my opinion, is lacking here. When I look at the map, the highest disadvantaged communities are south of California Avenue on the project area map. And you indicated even in that FAQ document that 51% of the area must be in the highest disadvantaged community. However, none of the projects that the city has proposed are in those areas. And so me, along with some others, we had looked at some projects that I know meet the requirements and goals of TCC, and those are ones that we proposed. The electric circulator bus that you mentioned that goes down to P Street. And then one of the advantages on that is there's no existing transit bus that goes through the disadvantaged community that goes downtown. And so the number 46 goes along 4th Street, which is another project we submitted, an active transportation improvements on 4th Street corridor. That bus does not go downtown. The circulator bus, electric circulator bus that we proposed would go on P Street so people could transfer, and at least there is a way to get downtown from anywhere south of California Avenue other than Chester. So, and I have other concerns and comments, but from my experience with TCC in Fresno, the community was very involved in providing input on the projects. And my understanding is no one probably knows of the 2 projects that we proposed. So it's not clear to me how you would get input from the community in the process that you've gone through so far on projects that may be proposed. I know the city would evaluate them, but my understanding is TCC one of the goals is that the projects are recommended and come from the communities, the disadvantaged communities.
Okay, all right. Well, one thing I was going to get to at the kind of summing at the end, but I'll mention it now. One of the things that we were hoping to accomplish with this planning effort is to get that community collaborative going and find interested people who want to be part of it, so we can continue to vet and discuss projects. That's one of the, yeah, I agree. One of the obviously we can't do it all with just this planning process, and TCC wasn't meant to be limited that way. Even through the next phase for implementation, we have to continually engage the community through application process, through even after if you get awarded, lucky enough to get awarded, you have to continually engage. And yeah, in your structure, you have to line out, how many meetings you're gonna have, what if you're gonna have working groups, or all of that. It's all very formal. And
Yeah. I don't mean to cut you off, but I know time is of the essence, but I'm very familiar with the TCC process. But I do have a question. The projects I proposed, what steps would you go through to get community input on those?
We would get this stakeholder group together. You wanted to be part of it. There's other members. I have a pretty comprehensive list. I've been working with Emma and the Leadership Council. We've been together a list, and our intent is to continually bring projects to this steering committee group.
But I don't think the stakeholder group, and I think that's a good idea, does not represent the community, like the lady and the gentleman that spoke earlier. If they're not in the stakeholder committee.
I don't, you don't know who we've talked to, Troy. That's not a fair thing to say. I don't agree with that.
That's a fair statement, but I would say,
I know Emma's on the call, and I would like her to talk about the type of engagement, if she doesn't mind, that we did to try to get people. One other thing that hit us too is COVID. Our intent was to do regular community engagement in person, talk to people, but we had to switch it to virtual, and that really burdened it. But we had to do what we had to do, and we had to make sure we did it safely. So we did what we could. We did as Emma, I know in her group, they knocked on doors. We sent notices to schools in the community. We as many ways we can get flyers to people as much as possible, we did. They held impromptu information sense meetings in their office with members of the residents of the community. We did as much as we could. And honestly, it'd been great if we could have had a focused members of the community do additional outreach for us, but we are, as much as we could in our limited capacity, we reached as many as we could.
I understand the challenges. I would just say a stakeholder group, even if it has ideal members, is not the same as the public or people from
That's who they will be. They will be the public, and they will be residents, business owners. That's why I asked that at the beginning, who live in the focus area, who are.
Well, in the Fresno TCC, they didn't have stakeholders only making the decisions. They had members of the community. But anyways, going back to what you mentioned with Emma, and I'm glad that they reached out, because the only way I found out about the February meeting that you had was from Emma, and that was like just a few days before it. And I've talked to a number of people in the community that have no clue, including the people at the Black Chamber, about TCC or that this effort was going on.
I sent emails to everybody who was
I'm only going what they explained to me.
Well,
However, I do have some concerns about the TCC project. I would like for you to consider both the electric circulator transit as well as a long-term project that included a new route that serviced the southeast with maybe a transit center at MLK and go down to a new actual a transfer stop at Cottonwood Road and the 58, as well as consideration of the 4th Street active transportation proposal that goes from Chester and 4th to South King. That includes sidewalk improvements, crosswalks at the middle school and the elementary school, which you can't even see. In our proposal we sent, we did on-site survey and provide photos of the existing infrastructure, bus stops without any shelters. There's no street markings for the bike lanes and others. So
okay.
from what I know about TCC and the Strategic Growth Council, those are things that they would fund.
Yeah.
But from my understanding so far, I don't see how that would advance.
Okay.
Hey,
Well, we will definitely.
Julia, if I may
I
jump in.
appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah, Mr. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Cecilia, it's so good to see you. It's so good to see staff. Jackie, good to see you on here. And all the stakeholders who I know and who have expressed unequivocally, just the sheer need in Southeast Bakersfield, specifically south of California as it relates to this project. I'm getting a little overwhelmed with emotions here because, we need to look no further than the past 2 weeks of what's been in the paper, right? We had a shooting there at Wayside Park, which I know is outside of the bounds of this project area, but we had, 3 shootings there at MLK Park. It seems like every other day we have, a pedestrian accident or a pedestrian fatality going down Union. I don't know if you guys travel Union as much as I do. I live just off of it on 4th. But I kid you not, there is an accident. It seems like every other, week right there. It's dangerous. And not to mention that, I think yesterday there was an article saying that, the city of Bakersfield is the 2nd deadliest city for pedestrians. And so I say all this because, and let me back up. I recognize that there's a problem. How we got to this problem, I don't know. I think there are a lot of factors. But at the end of the day, I think that we are devoid of projects that are what we would consider shovel ready south of California. And so that's why I've, lended some of my time and effort to work with folks like Troy, to work with other partners so that we can get those project plans together, because we realize that there's been a lot of interest in downtown and revitalizing downtown. Nothing to take away from downtown. There has been a ton of interest, and I have personal interest in seeing downtown revitalized and made beautiful. But frankly, the Southeast community, south of California, we have not had that pre-planning work that has put us in a place where we're ready with those shovel-ready projects to submit to TCC as part of this project plan. And not to mention, on top of that, I know it's challenging for you guys as well. COVID struck us at the worst time when it comes to planning this thing. And so, and on top of that, a lot of these communities are already hard to reach. We know that they work long hours. They have big families that they need to feed. And so all of that said, I would like to know from city staff, given that problem, given that there's a lack of project proposals being proposed south of California that are shovel ready, what can we do, and to what extent can we work together to make sure that those communities that need it the most are getting the resources that they deserve through TCC and other grant and funding opportunities?
All right, thank you. Yeah, I agree. And we will definitely make it more clear in the plan to include projects south of the intent was not to exclude anything in the project area. We made it very clear that anything is open, and I think it's just, the purpose of this is a draft plan, and we purposely left implementation mostly bare because we wanted to make sure, like when we said at our outreach event in January, did we get it right? That was our first initial question. what did we miss? What are we missing? So, I mean, and Adam put a question is like, what are our steps? We are going to release another draft review before it's final. So again, we can ask that same question after this feedback. Did we get it right? Or what are we still missing? So all of the projects here, and if you can be as specific as you can, is very helpful. So that way we make sure we're getting these neighborhood gaps and including possible fundable projects in the project area. So.
If I could just, I appreciate that. If I could just ask a follow-up question, and it's that, because we want to be helpful. We realize that staff is overburdened. You guys do everything for the city. We recognize that you're balancing so many different hats. And we want to be as helpful as possible, because at the end of the day, what we want is for, our community to thrive. And specifically, the people who need it the most, the communities that need it the most, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my question to you is what can stakeholders do, community members do, to help facilitate this process, to ensure that those dollars are going in the places that they need to go the most?
Be part of this group. I mean, really TCC, it's a 5-6 year commitment from community members to be engaged, to come to meetings, to come. I mean, I know their time is valuable. People work hard, people work late, but I mean that to make your voice heard, you gotta come to the table. And that's what, that's why the city is committed to, once this, we're using this grant to do this main planning process, but the community engagement part won't end. We plan to work with Leadership Council on a continued basis to continue to bring voices to the table, continue to vet projects. One thing about TCC, it's kind of unknown right now as far as when the next round will be funded. So we have some time, at least 1.5 years, because it's not in the current state budget and it's not in next year's state budget. So there's time. And during that time, we can continue to make ourselves, I like to call TCC ready. So
Awesome.
Hope that answers your question.
Sure. Thank you. Good to see you again.
All right, you too. All right, more hands. Emma, you have your hand raised?
Sure, yes, thank you very much. So I want to say, first of all, when it comes to the community engagement piece, yes, there was limited community engagement. I think, that's very obvious from the plan in and of itself. However, the feedback that we did receive through community engagement were not necessarily reflected in the projects. And I think that's where it's really hard to be able to get community buy-in into this plan, because community members made their voices heard. They mentioned during the community engagement part that they wanted the Mill Creek extension, that they wanted lighting, that they wanted it by the parks south of California Avenue. All of those things were mentioned. And though it was minimal, like, we still got that feedback. And I heard it again after the plan was released. So I think there definitely needs to be, those two need to be connected. The plan needs to reflect it. And so I wanted to ask for the city, what is the plan there? So is the city committed to including those projects in the final plan? Even if they're not work plans necessarily, even if they're not concrete proposals, will the city include the feedback that was provided in the final plan? And then also going back to the housing, before I forget, sorry, Cecilia, it's very obvious. There's a concentration of affordable housing south of California Avenue. That's the only thing that south of California Avenue received. There isn't connections to transportation. There's only one bike lane that was provided from south of California Avenue. There wasn't any complete streets except for California Avenue, obviously. And so it's really hard to be able to, be happy with the affordable housing in that area without any additional resources. The job center is going to be north of California Avenue. The downtown circulator was not going to come down to that area. And so it's in order for the city to fully comply with affirmatively furthering fair housing, there needs to be additional resources in that area, and affordable housing needs to be distributed throughout the entire focus area. And I don't think it's a general plan issue, because there's residential homes throughout south of California Avenue, right? And downtown. So there's, I think, obviously, depending on the available sites and whatnot, there is still opportunity to add some of those housing throughout that area. And then, going back to the making downtown Bakersfield, I think it's great, to have that vision there. But TCC is designed for disadvantaged areas. It's designed to reduce the pollution burden. And even with the trees on California Avenue and 21st Street, they were not in the focus area. They were outside of the focus area. And so I think, that's why there's not a lot of community buy-in right now. And we really need to see some of the urban greening be part of the TCC focus area, not only because it's part of it, but also because the 58 runs by Brundage, and all those emissions go into the community. Then we have the train tracks that run on Edison. So that community is burdened. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to not only provide the community with basic infrastructure, but to also provide the community additional just, resources and amenities that it deserves. So back to the question about, will the city commit to addressing and including some of those projects?
Yes, definitely. I mean, like, you were part of the meetings. I mean, if there's things we missed, I don't think any of that stuff was left out. I just think it wasn't structured and told as well as it could, because I think we definitely left all of those neighborhood opportunities there, but I think we can definitely tell our story better in the plan to show that commitment to these areas. So it's not a problem, but there's still, I want to get through a couple more people. We're running, I'm extending this a little bit longer to give other people opportunity. I have somebody here, it's called Thomas's iPad.
It's Tom Lingo. How are you?
Hi.
I don't know why it says Thomas's iPad. It's Tom Lingo. Troy and I are probably the only two people in this conversation who have received grants from Strategic Growth Council. And a question came up earlier with regards to how do you establish which projects you pick. You better pick a project that scores well on Cal and Byro's screen, or you will go nowhere. I mean, and I've said this to Phil, I said this in a meeting in the basement of the city 5 years ago, sitting next to you. If you don't have a quality application, I don't know how good a project you have if you don't hear facts of it. And Troy Hightower, on the other hand, he's part of the president of TCC. He knows what's going on there. And I think he's trying to relay that to you, that you need to pick your projects and make sure you do. You can self-score through Cal and Byro's screen, through the Strategic Growth Council, and figure out if you are going to score to win. And if you don't do that, when you're picking these projects, you're going to fail. And it's terrible, because Bakersfield and Southeast Bakersfield, South of California, desperately need it. But man, I'm telling you, it is competitive. You guys have no idea how competitive it is. I think you do, Cecile, but the general public doesn't understand that it's just not a project that you're going to pick that you think the city needs it. It has to conform to their structure. And if it doesn't, you are not going to get funded. And that's as simple as I can put it. And I would just express that to everybody in this meeting, is that there's got to be a leader, and that leader needs to understand what the Strategic Growth Council wants. And you got to tailor your application to what they want, or you will fail. Because I failed. I probably built the biggest project in Southeast Bakersfield, the Camellias between Bell Terrace and Casa Loma, out of the city on the east side of anybody in Bakersfield. And I'm just telling you, you got to conform to their requirements and understand that. And if you do understand that, then that's what, I mean, you just got to go down that lane. And if you get out of that lane, you're not going to get funded. And that's about as stern as I can put it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I please, I'm sorry, listen, most cities are not going to develop high crime areas. So we really have to address the crime. You know, it's dollars and donuts. You know, when you are trying to bring tourists or whatever people to get them to come to your city, you don't want to have them come off a high-speed rail into a high crime area. You know, this is why it's downtown. Someone mentioned Old Town. Okay, well, you know, downtown is a lot better choice than Old Town. You know, when you build a really large, low-income housing development, and that's all it is, and it's not 10%, 20%, or 30%, you're just going to get a large area full of crime. Okay, and we need to not do that anymore. Everything needs to be all-inclusive all across Bakersfield, where we get to the point where if we build any more large complexes, it's anywhere from 10 to 30% real, true, affordable housing, okay? And everything else is at the normal rate. This way, you have an income base that's gonna support your community. If you look at the type of businesses that are here, you know, we're not providing our share of funding. So why isn't there a Costco? You know, why isn't there a Winco, which is employee owned? That would be great for the people in this community, that, you know, they can work at a place and have a stake in it as well. You know, you look at areas like Union Avenue and Chester Avenue, you got a lot of mom and pops there, okay? So we need to mix in new ideas like, you know, what about the Jersey Mike's? You know, McDonald's is old news. You know, you need to bring a variety of different flavors that are franchised. You know, take a look at maybe something that's successful, maybe someplace in Louisiana, and bring in some of those places because culturally they're very similar. And we can do that here in Bakersfield, in this area, and all the community will be excited to say, hey, I don't have to go to New Orleans? You know, I can get that right here now. You know, those are the type of things and ideas besides bike lanes and parks and green spaces that I love to enjoy myself. And one more thing, I've missed the majority of these. It's hard to stay engaged on my schedule, but you know, these meetings, like I barely got in today. They changed my work hours. But to me, 7 to 9 o'clock, we would have a lot more engagement if we could change the time frame for these meetings.
Okay, thank you. Greg? Are you here, Greg?
Hey, sorry, I'm here. It took me a minute to get to my mute. I just wanted to weigh in and thank you, Cecilia, and all the staff of City of Bakersfield. I just wanted to weigh in regarding the South of California Avenue issue. And I want to thank Mr. Hightower. I wasn't aware of his project. And I have to mention that when I first met with the city, I was on the board at the senior center at that time. And we told you then that we had a project ready for a new senior center. The Bakersfield Senior Center at 4th Street is the oldest senior center in Bakersfield. And with that information, I found out that part of the project that they've proposed includes a circulatory electric connector system, because there's a bus stop at 4th Street right in front of the senior center. And I'm going to cut this short because I'm really excited on this, because this has been very painful listening to. But I called the GET. I searched the GET schedule to see what would happen if I was to ride the bus from the senior center to San Joaquin Hospital. and the schedule showed that if I caught the bus in front of the senior center, that bus would take me to the Weibel Road transit interchange and then downtown, which was about an hour and a half, which is ridiculous. So I say to Mr. Hightower, that is what the senior center was looking at, is building a new senior center. And they proposed, they have project ready, they own the property, which would include solar charging stations, transportation for our seniors, and I just found out last week or a couple weeks ago, they wanted to include some additional senior housing. So I'm gonna stop because I did want to say one thing that Councilman Arias hit on was in the paper yesterday. It said that 82% of the pedestrians killed in Bakersfield are Black, and they showed the picture of Union Avenue, and none of the projects that the TCC has proposed includes any additional upgrades or stoplights or anything on Union Avenue. It doesn't include anything, any sidewalks for our kids walking through the Carnation track, none of those things. So I'm going to stop there.
All right, well, thank you, Greg. I don't see any other.
Excuse me, could I just
Sure.
make a quick comment since he mentioned some of the projects? I appreciate the comments. One of the things that TCC does support is projects that complement another project. So the 4th Street Active Transportation Corridor would mean, new sidewalks and bus station stops with shelters, crosswalks at Union and so on. But any other development that was within that same, like the 4th Street Center, or improvements like the solar that you mentioned, since they're adjacent to the project we're proposing, those are the kind of things that TCC, in my experience, they have supported, where the projects support each other.
Yep, good idea. All right, Emma, she has her hand up again.
Sorry, Cecilia. So just to, and hopefully on a good note, what is the timeline for the revised plan? And again, asking for the commitment, not only from you, but from city manager's office to ensure that all of the community's priorities are in the plan.
What we'll do, there will be another draft plan. We're working on revisions now. There will be another draft plan, probably, April-ish. I'm not sure when. We'll try to get most of our revisions done by the end of this month. So early April is my go-to time. And then we'll do another probably another 2-week review to get input. Everybody who's in this call will, if I don't have your email, please include it in the chat. I'll make sure you get notified when it gets released. And again, that way you guys can confirm, it's clear on the type of projects. But to be fair, kind of what Mr. Ringos said, projects that are most competitive will ultimately get funded. We definitely will include a holistic list, but I want to be fair and say the caveat doesn't mean it will happen, because it depends on how much, there's a budget. It depends, but we also will include, because one of the components of TCC is to leverage local dollars. So if there's other possible funding sources that could add, that will add to it, we will name those additional possible public dollars that can be committed, or could be, and other grant opportunities that could be leveraged. It could leverage state, federal, local. There's a lot of opportunity. So we definitely will be clear in our path going forward. All the projects you guys named today will be included, and we will be fair in showing, showing how they meet those 3 criteria, whether it's a greenhouse gas you know, how we ranked it in the chart, whether it's a greenhouse gas benefit, economic benefit, or health benefit, and show how they reach those TCC goals. So.
And if I may interject really quickly, in the letter we sent with community feedback, we did try to highlight what those benefits are for this project. So hopefully that can help reduce some of the work that will come along with revising the plan, but also just to really highlight the fact that aside from having competitive projects, TCC will be funded if there is strong community buy-in. And you know, as we're seeing right now, there's not a lot of community buy-in, and so we're hoping that the final plan will be inclusive of the entire focus area, and that the final plan will include those projects. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a work plan. It can be just like the concept of it, maybe the location, an idea of where the project will be. But we really do need to see that. The community needs to see that in order to fully support the plan.
Ms. De La Rosa, I just wanted to comment. This is Jackie with the city manager's office, and thank you. Thank you for your letter. Thank you for engaging. And I think Cecilia laid it out really well. We want to include all of your ideas, and getting them through this process, through the workshops, through everything is so important. And we're so glad to see this participation. It's hard. You know that we're all participating on a lot of Zooms in the last year. And so it's been a challenge, but what we will do, and I'm committed to it, and Cecilia's committed to it, is vet out each one of those projects on this list, and that we get feedback. We'll work with the Strategic Growth Council to see how we can put that all in as a part of a package, make sure that they qualify under their very stringent criteria. But I think we're making a really good case.
And the vetting process, I'm sorry to interrupt, the vetting process needs to go through the community, not through the city, right? And so I'm glad that this meeting is being held today, because this is the first step forward, right? But yeah, again, bringing it back to the community, it has to be community-led and developed. And I guess with your words, vetted as well.
Yeah, and I agree that that commitment, I mean, one of the things with this planning process, we don't see it as an end. It's not, it's just, the idea is we'll put as many as all these possible, you know, qualified projects in there, and they will continue to get vetted, even after this plan is per se final. But ultimately, in reality, it probably really is final. It's really, it'll be more of an action plan, kind of steps going forward. We'll lay out, you know, here are the projects, here are how we'll continually engage the community. So we will be ready. We'll lay that out in the plan and make it clear that, you know, it's not just because it says final plan doesn't mean because honestly, a year and a half is a long time. There might be new projects that come up. There might be new priorities. And it'll be acceptable as long as we make it clear in our community engagement that we log and we keep a record, so that we could submit with our application that, okay, this project isn't in our plan, but we did engage the community. We did, you know, it came up as our priority because of this reason. As long as we have that and show that and demonstrate that, it can be part of the application. So it just, you know, a lot can happen. I mean, we'll try to commit as many. That's why it's important now to try to, with this current opportunity, to add as many projects as we can. And then hopefully when we're ready, we will have that, you know, shovel ready list of projects that can be funded. So
Cecilia, can I ask a question? Or here, the question I have, first of all, let me first say thank you for this opportunity. And thank you to Jackie Kitchen for also being on and having input as well. I think in order for collaboration to take place, I think it would only be fair if everyone knew the numerous proposed projects, and see how we could all collaborate whether it's a few, 2, 3, or whatever, in order for us to probably come up to a real community proposed project.
Yeah.
And without knowing who's doing what, because it seems like some of us are holding our projects back because we don't want it disclosed for whatever reason, I don't know. But the point being is, if it's put out there, then I think it would allow for collaboration to take place, because if that's the #1 goal is collaboration, then I think that's just one step in that direction. And Mr. Hightower, please look at the chat. I did provide you my telephone number. Please, let's talk so we can collaborate.
Great.
I'd be happy to, and you brought up a good point, which is I would really like to know how the community thought about the transit proposal and the 4th Street active transportation project that we submitted to the city. And I'm sure no one in the community is even aware of it, but I'd really like to hear what the community input or comments would be on those projects.
It'll be in the next iteration. So, and then we can, people can provide input, and again, we'll continue to, even after the plan is final, continually engage. So, Mr. Greg, you have your hand up.
Hi, I'm just glad that Lily stepped in. Lily, thanks a lot. And Mr. Hightower, again, I do want to say what you proposed sounded great, and I'm sorry we didn't know about it before and we didn't have a chance to collaborate. I did want to speak, Cecilia, directly and the staff of city to the fact, when you say shovel ready, the senior center, the property is owned by the senior center. They have developed their architectural plans. They have developed their communications with the solar developers. And I don't know about the senior housing. I know I just found out recently that they were looking at additional senior housing, so I don't know where that is. But 2 years ago, they were shovel ready, and I'm sure they're even more shovel ready now. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Cecilia. I agree with the comments that others have made. I mean, downtown is wonderful, but they've had other planning efforts. This plan itself is about creating ladders of opportunity for the disadvantaged communities. That no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So I really am hoping in the revised version that we see that really kind of addressed and strongly come out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands. I think we're good. Oh, Troy?
Yeah, I was looking at the chats, and it looks like some people are interested in our proposal. Is there, what did you say is going to be the way that the public can find out about what's been proposed? Or
It'll be in the draft plan.
So they would have to wait for the draft plan to see what we had proposed?
I mean, you're welcome to share it. I mean, again, the city's not the only entity involved in this. I mean, this isn't, like Emma Kim said, it's a community-driven, community-led thing. In some TCC applications, the city wasn't even the main applicant. It's a nonprofit, local community group. You do need the city involved in your application, especially for anything proposed in the public right-of-way that would involve, parks or public works to do an actual project. But again, I mean, you guys are welcome to start meeting on your own and discussing projects and organizing things and submitting letters. And again, the city is committed to meeting regularly on this, even after the plan going forward. But I would love to see more action in the community. I mean, it's not meant to be me. It's not meant to be just city staff. It's meant to be a grassroots, community-led plan. And one of the reasons the city did apply is we saw this opportunity and we didn't want to lose it. So, so we committed, we submitted an application, got as many interested parties as we could to do it quickly, and that way we can bring this opportunity to the community. Luckily we did.
I'll just add that both the proposals, the circulator bus and the 4th Street active transportation, came from comments from the community, as well as we looked at your plan, and in your plan you had noted some comments from the community. And as you know, in the proposal we submitted, we used those to justify the projects that we had proposed, and we're happy to talk to more members of the community.
It'd be great.
I'm happy. I can say that those projects were based on, one, comments that we heard either directly or read about in your report, and what I know about TCC's interest in the disadvantaged communities.
It'd be great, Troy, if you can get like names and emails of everybody who supports your project. I mean,
well, I would just say go to your plan. We took them right out of the sections you have that say these are comments we received, and they're bulleted: 4th Street Avenue, 4th Street Avenue, South of California Avenue. We just took the word for word they support our project.
Okay.
That's in your plan.
Okay.
I wonder too, when it comes to like the actual vetting process of projects and implementation, that would also be part of the implementation grant if funded, correct? Cecilia.
It depends if it's meets the criteria. There's readiness criteria in the guidelines. For each proposed project, it has to meet those readiness criteria. When you apply, at least 50% of the projects need to be ready. Right. So depending, if you look at, there's tables at the end of the guidelines. I believe one of my staff did a link to the guidelines in the chat. So if you look at under transit, you will see what is required. So, we will need to bring GET to the table. They already are. We have met with them and talked to them about. So, I mean, and I have, when Troy sent me that project proposal, I immediately sent it to get their feedback. I mean, we're taking these comments seriously. You guys act like we're not. I mean, everything, when we listed those priority projects, those were just based on what we saw would bring a large impact and met the needs of the commons. Obviously, it doesn't include everything. We did say any kind of these types of improvements can happen in the neighborhood, and we did state that in the plan. Excuse me. It just we just obviously need to be a little more specific. We kept it more broad-based because we wanted to get the specifics with the public review. That was the intent. We kept it very broad and said, we can do all these neighborhood enhancements. We can plant trees, we can do urban greening, we can do complete streets, but in all of this and the whole focus area. But what we called out was what ones that we thought could make a large impact. So sorry, talking too much.
I haven't
Thank
seen
you,
those plans.
Cecilia. Guys, everybody, I want to respect everyone's time. I know that we had this scheduled from 4 to 5. We really appreciate your feedback. This has been a lot of great information, and as Cecilia said, we'll incorporate all of this into the revised plan that comes out. And if necessary, please email Cecilia if you want to engage again, and we can think about holding another one of these meetings. We'd be happy to do that. We want to make sure that we're getting everyone's thoughts, comments, ideas all on record. So thank you everyone for your time. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. If you have any more comments, get us your ideas, reach out to your community members, people that you know that you think may be interested, and please send them in to us.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Cecilia.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Tina. We'll talk soon.
We sure will. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Cecilia. Would it be possible for you just to capture the chat, just to record, I think, some of the comments? I think some
Already
people-
did.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. Have a good evening, I appreciate it.
Thank you.